Welcome to episode 7 of the 1,000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die, where we will once again step into our musical randomizer, our musical time machine, and take a look at some classic recordings throughout musical history. And today we have another very eclectic mix. We have some guitar music, we have some dance music, we've got all sorts going on. So without further ado, album number 19 of 1,000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die. Album 19 of the 1,000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die is by an artist called John Fahey, who lived from 1939 to 2001 and was musically active from 1959 to the day he died in 2001, and is credited as the foundation of American primitive guitar. So in his career he produced 36 studio albums and 6 live albums, and was ranked number 35 in Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Guitarists. A fun fact, later in his life he actually gained a great passion for painting and did a lot of painting as well as recording, and today we're looking at a fantastically titled album called The Transfiguration of Blind Joe Death. Released in 1959, no specific date given, with a running time of 43:21, and when it was originally released it wasn't marketed or really pushed at all, and it actually sold less than 100 copies, so it steadily gained prominence over time, and I'm very curious to give it a listen because it's an old guitar album. It's probably in a style I'm not used to, so let's give this thing a listen and see what John Fahey and the Transfiguration of Blind Joe Death is all about. The Transfiguration of Blind Joe Death is a really interesting record. It's another one that falls into the category for me of there's no such thing as bad music, just music you like and music you don't like. And he was called the founder of primitive American guitar, and it is quite primitive. It's very old-timey, and it's not a style that I plan on listening to an awful lot outside of this exercise. But one thing I will say is it's very clear the whole way through that John Fahey is a terrific guitarist. His technique is fantastic. This album has no lyrics, it has no drums, it has no bass, it has no piano. It's just one man on a guitar producing all the melodies, all the harmonies, with an incredible knack for brilliant finger picking. Personally, I'm not sure I would have put this album on a list of 1,000 Recordings to Hear Before I Die, just because I didn't love it, but I can see the historical significance of this kind of guitar work, and there were a couple of tracks I picked out. The first was On the Sunny Side of the Ocean, which is just a really fun little tune, and the one I really loved was 101 is a Hard Road to Travel, and the reason I loved it was that he does some of his best guitar work on that song. There's some really lovely, really elegant finger picking, and it just sounds incredible, so feel free to give it a listen. And now for some more balanced analysis from Tom Moon. Tom Moon's analysis of this album is really interesting, and he's saying it's a very influential guitar album because of what John Fahey did for guitar music with it, and that is he took the traditional finger-picking style of blues and traditional American guitar and he bent it to all sorts of different genres. He was one of the first guitarists to play with alternate tunings, which I didn't realise listening to it, so he had lots of weird and wonderful tunings. And actually, he says if you sit and listen to it deeply, which I did in fairness, you can pick out a lot of much deeper themes as it runs through. So beautifully played, very influential in terms of the way it crosses genres and styles and the techniques he used, which other guitarists would pick up in the years to come. And he also went on apparently to found a very inspirational record label, which did great things for music as well. So thank you to John Fahey for all his brilliant work during his lifetime of music. And Tom Moon's selections of tracks are Arinda Moraga and On the Sunny Side of the Ocean. And it's another thing John Fahey did. He mixed in some world music with his more traditional American style. So influential album. Give it a listen if you want to hear something that's a bit different. Just be prepared for it being pretty old-fashioned compared to modern music. And now we move on to album number 20. So album number 20, we are going to Senegal for a bit of world music into the artistry of Youssou N'Dour. Active from the 1970s to the present day, born Dakar, Senegal. He's a singer and a percussionist. He has produced a stonking 39 studio albums, has 7 award nominations with 2 wins, including the Edison Award for Best Pop and a MOBO Award for Best African Act. So a lot of critical and commercial success from an artist from Senegal. And today we're going to be listening to an album called Immigrés. Immigrés by Youssou N'Dour was released in 1984 with a running time of 34 minutes and 1 second, consisting only though of 4 tracks, so 4 fairly lengthy tracks, which I know can be intimidating, or I can find intimidating at times because I have the concentration span of a goldfish at times. It was ranked that year in the 18 in NME's Albums of the Year, so it did get quite a lot of critical success, which is very impressive for a world music album. So let's give it a listen and see what Immigrés is all about.
You control that ship. You're a bargaining ship. Why would you destroy something you control? Because that ship...
This is a great album. I loved it. It's 4 long tracks, and it's 4 tracks I would thoroughly recommend listening to. There is so much to love about Youssou N'Dour. So one thing I will say is, not in English, so I didn't understand a word of what was said because my French is somewhat lacking nowadays, unfortunately. But the percussion in particular is incredible. It's got lovely rhythms on African drums and other percussion instruments that just give it this real lovely, happy party feeling. There is lovely, really jangly, tinkly guitar work. And his voice is really lovely as well. It's really calming and happy and fun. It's just a great, easy listening album. And not in a jazz lounge sense, if you want something to make you feel happy, listen to Immigrés by Youssou N'Dour. And of the 4 tracks, 2 really stood out for me. The first was the second track, Piche Me, which I'm not going to talk too much about because the one I absolutely loved is Tour, which is track 3, and that's because I think it contains all the best parts of this album in one song. It's got great percussion, great guitar, great singing, great rhythms, a great happy feel, and I am so glad I've listened to this album. For me, definitely one of 1,000 recordings to hear before you die, and I would never have listened to it without this book, so thank you to Tom Moon, and we will get his impression of this album now. So Tom Moon's analysis of Immigrés is really interesting. So little note first is the first track on this album is actually apparently based on his first ever trip to Paris, Youssou N'Dour's first trip to Paris, where he came across a lot of Senegalese immigrants or immigrés learning to deal with life in the big French city, and that's really interesting in itself. The analysis highlights how good the instrumentation is, how you get those really nice Senegalese drums and drummers, along with 2 guitars that really do lend itself to a more commercial European American audience. It says that Youssou N'Dour produces both very traditional Senegalese percussion music, but also produces much more popular music, sort of verse chorus stuff, which is what this is, and it's apparently championed heavily by Peter Gabriel, a fantastic artist as well. His voice, as I mentioned in my analysis, has been described as angelic, and Tom Moon says it's almost reed-like in its delicacy, and I really love it. And he points out that N'Dour never showboats on this record. He just sings in the right pitch and the right volume, and there's no attempt at anything flashy. It just sounds really, really nice. I couldn't agree more with all this analysis from Tom Moon. It's a great album, it's a great recording, and it's well worth a listen. In terms of tracks to pick, Tom Moon actually chose all 4, so he's just saying listen to the album, and I don't disagree, so feel free to go away and give Immigrés a listen. It's brilliant. For our final album of today, we are going into a new genre again for the first time, and that is the genre of dance music with legendary dance producer Aphex Twin. Active from 1985 to the present day in the electronic, techno, ambient scenes, has been called the most inventive and influential figure in contemporary electronic music. Over his career, he has produced 6 studio albums and limitless singles. He has too many award nominations for me to mention. They're just endless. But 6 wins, including a Grammy for Best Dance and Electro Album. And yeah, I'm really intrigued. I know Aphex Twin. I've listened to some Aphex Twin, but I've never listened to a full album in detail. So let's have a look at this album. So today we're going to be looking at selected ambient works 85 to 1982. So today we're going to be looking at selected ambient works 85 to 92, released on the 9th of November 1992, with a running time of 74:40. So it's quite an endeavour. And I was a bit nervous going into this because of the length of it, but you know, you've got to be up for everything with this particular challenge. It was ranked 92 in NME's 100 best albums, so quite highly endorsed, and I'm very curious to see what it has to offer. So let's give it a listen and see what we think. Selected ambient works 85 to 92. Long album, worth it, I think. It's really, really interesting. So having listened through it, I think the real positives of this album are it's beautifully relaxing, start to finish. It's really chilled out, really, really nice, and it's really smooth. Aphex Twin has definitely got away with tone and with feel and ambience, and that's what comes through more than anything. On the negative side, if you like lyrics, it's not for you because Aphex Twin doesn't do lyrics, and it didn't grab my attention all the way through. So it was a long album, and there's always going to be some tracks I wasn't so keen on, and I did kind of drift away on some of the maybe most ambient of the ambient works. But it was a great listen, and I'm very glad I listened to it. In terms of tracks, there are 2 I picked out. Helios Fan, which has great drum and bass drums, and what it really feels to me like is the precursor to the Prodigy. Almost, it's obviously Prodigy not ambient at all, but there was a certain Prodigy-like feel. It's if the Prodigy was to do a chilled-out song, that Helios Fan is what that will be. And then the one I loved one other thing was called Agiespolis, and I'm sorry for my pronunciation of these titles. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce them. What I didn't realise is that there's a great band called Die Antwoord, and they've got a song called Ugly Boy, which I absolutely love, and the sample they use is from Agiespolis by Aphex Twin, and it's this wonderful cheeky keyboard riff, and it just sounds great no matter who's doing it. So that's my analysis, and now we'll turn our attention to Tom Moon. Tom Moon highlights, I think, all of Aphex Twin's strengths on this album. So what he says is that Aphex Twin was originally remixing club tunes, high energy electronica-based club tunes, and this was his pet side project in terms of his passion for ambient techno or ambient club music. And what he does so well is take simple melodies, beats, and infuse them with auras. Like I think I was saying, he's a master of tone and aura, and it's truly, truly relaxing, and it's an album to really chill out to. And really, the reason it's here, I think, is because it was the foundation of a genre called ambient techno, but I think it goes beyond that, and it's anything that's kind of slowed down, calmer electronic music. And you could still have it in a club, it just wouldn't be for the particularly wild bits. So great album, and I think the analysis from Tom Moon is pretty much the same as mine, which is it's chilled out, it's relaxing. One fun thing he says is to listen to it with headphones on to really get full effect. So I can see what he means, because there's a lot of intricacies in Aphex Twin's sound, and a lot of little bits and pieces going on here and there that you won't realise if you hear it through a tinny phone speaker or anything like that. So yeah, give it a listen through headphones if you really want to get the most out of this album. In terms of Tom Moon's favourite tracks, he has gone for Agiespolis, We Are the Music Makers, Pulse Width, and Delphium. So feel free to give those a listen and see what you think. And there ends our final album of today. Thank you for joining me once again on episode 7 of the 1,000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die Valkyries edition. And I hope you've enjoyed it, and you've enjoyed our crazy mix of genres again. So, with some ambient techno, some electronica, some classic guitar music from John Fahey. And yeah, next time we'll explore another set of weird and wonderful and brilliant albums. I can't wait to share them with you. And until then, feel free to enjoy our other projects of Valkyrie's vlog, our lyric videos, our video for the Nightmare, and even just our debut album, All Bets Are Off, while we produce the second one. But until then, I will see you on episode 8, and have a lovely time until then. Goodbye for now.